Where and when were you born? We'll start at the very beginning.
Where and when were we born? Okay, I was born in May 31st, 1943, in Oak Park, Illinois.
Oh, and how did your family get to uh, L.A.?
My father was an airline pilot for TWA, one of the early ones with the company when it was formed in the 30s, and was domiciled different places. But after he got married, the first place was Kansas City, where my older sister was born, then Chicago, where I was born, then Los Angeles, where my brother was born. So there.
Mm. So that makes you a Gemini, right?
Yes.
Do you feel like you have multiple personalities and are communicative and fun and whatever?
Being two-faced?
No, no,
Uh,
interesting. I'm a Gemini too.
no, I don't think so.
Why not? What? Why isn't that descriptive?
I don't think I have multiple personalities. I have one.
What is that? How would you describe that one personality?
Oh, these are questions aren't on the list. I don't know. Pretty calm most of the time, except when Skype won't work. And
Fun, loving,
yeah, fun loving, I guess.
good sense of humor, and intelligent.
I'll let her answer.
Okay,
A
that's
lot of
fair.
good things.
Rosemary, what about you? Where and when?
Okay, I was born January 1st, 1945 in Washington, D.C. And my father at that time was in the Air Force. And then when he got out of the Air Force, he went into the coffee machine business and vending machine business. And we moved from Baldwin Hills, once my folks got out of the service, to Bel Air I was in the 6th grade. And that kind of brings me into the neighborhood that you were in and Dave was in.
So you are a Capricorn, a mountain goat?
Yeah, I guess so.
I think of them as being hardworking, earthy. They can be stubborn. What does that apply to you at all?
Probably.
Hardworking.
I mean, lots of things. Yeah.
She's hardworking.
I don't know. Am I stubborn?
We haven't paid much attention to astrological signs, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It's not high on our list.
Okay. I like it just because it's a quick thumbnail into getting at someone's personality. And then what about your education career paths? You went to university high school and then what?
We met at University High School. We can talk about that later, but I then got an appointment to go to West Point, which played a big role in our relationship for lots of reasons, but put us 3,000 miles apart for 4 years. But the first thing it did, if he doesn't get in, you'd be able to go to the Air Force. But have you considered West Point? Which I really hadn't. So he said, I think you'd be well qualified. Why don't you go talk to your parents about it, see what they think. So I went and talked to my dad. He said, it's the granddaddy of all of them. And if they would accept it, you ought to go. I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. So ended up going on July 5th, 1961, reporting for duty.
Did you have like 4-point average and great SATs and activities and all that?
Yeah, and sports. I kind of well-rounded, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Not
So,
4.0. Those days they didn't give you extra credit for anything, so nobody got a 4.0.
Yeah.
I had a pretty high average, though, in the 3, 6, 7, 8, something like
Yeah,
that.
you were a good student.
yeah, good. Rosemary, what about you? Where did you go to college?
Okay, so I graduated in 62 in University High School, and I went to San Jose State with my kindergarten friend and a couple other people, and I was there 2.5 years, and then I took a semester off, and I modeled in New York and went with a couple sorority sisters because Dave was at West Point and we'd been separated. We both had dated other people in college, but we decided we'd been apart, and we kind of knew he'd get, when he graduated, an assignment away again. So we just kind of thought, let's see if this really, works. So I had a great time. I went up, modeled in New York, and went up to see Dave when he was playing sports, and met all his friends. I actually had visited West Point when Dave was a plebe, which is his first year. When I was in high school, my parents sent me back for Christmas. And so I had met all his friends then, and they all remembered me, which was great. And so it was really fun, great experience. Then I went to UCLA. Dave went off to flight training in Arizona, and I went a semester there. Then Dave called me and said, you have to hear this part, but you have to hear it.
But we had planned to get married in the summer of 1966.
Exactly. Okay. But I, was going to college. I wanted to finish college. Well, the war kind of was looking like it was ramping up a little bit. But Dave was miserable in flight school. He had a bad roommate. He didn't like him. So he called me and said, I want to get married sooner. And I said, oh, my gosh. And, so I said, okay. So I applied to Arizona State. So we got married in December. And I went to school in Arizona State. And eventually, with 5 years of college, I graduated from UCI in Irvine. It was a journey, but I, really wanted to finish college, and turned down Billy Wilder, the producer, director, wanted to put me in movies, and I said, I want to finish college. And so I'm really glad I did. So.
And what did you major in?
Okay, it was psychology, sociology. And I think the psychology was really fantastic for me. I feel like it really has helped me, in a lot of different fields and a lot of different things that I've done since college. So. And
then being in the armed forces, did you get moved around a lot during your career?
Yeah, let me back up a little bit. As I mentioned, I originally applied to the Air Force Academy because I wanted to fly like my father had flown. So when I graduated from West Point, I stood high enough in my class that I got an option to choose to be commissioned directly in the Air Force. There were only 10% of us that got to do that. So I actually didn't go in the Army, as most of my classmates did. I got commissioned in the Air Force and sent to flight school in the Air Force. So first assignment was pilot training, as Rose mentioned, in Phoenix, Arizona. Then she came and spent the last half of that with me after we got married. Then off to Oklahoma for a while, South Carolina,
Ohio. Two places in Ohio.
2 places in
We
Ohio.
had 13 moves in how many years? First 5.5 years of our marriage.
Then Vietnam.
And
when I went to Vietnam, Rose moved back with her parents, with our 1-year-old baby, not even one, to live in
a couple months
on Rosemarie Road in Bel Air with her parents while I was in Vietnam.
And then how long were you separated like that?
Well, the tour in Vietnam was 1 year.
Mm.
But before that, when you're in the service and you're a pilot, we were in South Carolina, and Dave was gone 10 days and home 2 days, and gone 10 days and home 2 days. He was flying to Vietnam, and
taking troops and supplies over there, and then bringing people back, and sometimes other stuff.
So he was gone a lot, which I taught school and went to school. I went to school in South Carolina too, and I taught school. I got a special teacher's exam that you had to get an A on or a B on, and I got an A on it so I could continue teaching the class that I'd started teaching, which was great. It was like a records exam, a graduate records exam, about an 8-hour test. Yeah, so it was a big deal. But anyhow, so we had a lot of separation times, that certainly weren't easy, obviously. So, but
what was harder, the 4 years at West Point or the year in Vietnam?
Oh, the year in Vietnam, because I was worried about your safety.
I agree.
And then you're so vulnerable. I had a little boy. I had made a big decision. It was big for me. Dave wanted to have a child, and I was had to decide, if I lose my husband in war, am I going to be a single mom raising a child? So I decided to, and we were blessed with a son. And he was only a couple months old when you went.
3.
3, yeah, to Vietnam. And so that was a good decision. I mean, all those things, getting married young, were good for us and great. And, having the child when we did, it was great. My mom and dad were wonderful with I was very close to my mom and dad, and they were very close to Dave. So they were wonderful to be living in the house with, and we just had a really good time under a really vulnerable, difficult situation, of course.
And then did you have more children?
Yes, it was 7.5 years between children, not intentionally, but and that's another long story, which we probably don't have enough tape for that.
We got
But
plenty
we
of
wanted
tape.
to have another. It took us years to have the second child, and eventually we did. Beautiful young girl, and we're not very creative, so our son's named David, our daughter's named Rose.
Everybody's named after. We have 5 generations of Roses in the family,
Oh.
and everybody's named after the maternal or paternal person. But
Well, you never have to change the letters, the inscriptions on your towels or anything else.
But
What were their
Dave is
nicknames? Because you can't have Dave and Rosemary and Rose.
Well, actually, it was Davy and Rosebud.
yeah, and Dave called me Rosebud. Now we call our daughter Budster or Rosebud.
Oh.
And Dave is living here. Fortunately, our son didn't qualify when he offered, unfortunately, but Dave is living with his daughter's kidney in his body. So this younger child that was 7 years younger than the older one, they both offered kidneys to Dave, and he is now has his daughter's kidney in him, which is really amazing. So, there's always sometimes you look back, you see, oh my gosh, things always work out the way they should.
Wow. So you, Dave, have your daughter's kidney.
Yes, I picked up a disease in Vietnam from exposure to Agent Orange called amyloidosis, which lays dormant for a long, long time, and then it finally surfaced by shutting down my kidneys. And so got that diagnosis in 2007. And in 2014, July 9th, my second birthday, I got a new lease on life and a kidney from my daughter, beautiful, healthy kidney. She's a very healthy, athletic girl, and it's worked great for me, obviously, and she's doing fine too.
Yeah, both the children offered without being asked, which is beautiful.
That's
and then
beautiful.
Dave had about 8 years of chemo. When he was diagnosed to have 6 months to a year to live because there's no cure for amyloidosis. So Dave we just did all sorts of collecting stem cells, all sorts of experimental chemo. And I went to every one of his chemos with him. And until they finally, the last year, they didn't have any room for me to sit in the hospital.
Too many people, but
yeah.
Well, the disease isn't curable, never goes away. It went dormant and in remission. So
yeah.
Then we were surprised when the oncologist said, well, now I think you could have a kidney transplant. So we were elated. So I did.
Wow, that's a lot. What kept you together through all those separations? Why was it? What was the bonds that kept you together, that attracted you initially and then survived those separations?
That's a very big question.
It's a really big question. I like it the way you have it on the paper here. It's easier to answer.
Let's start with the initial attraction.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but it was fairly uncommon at least it was for me, to date younger girls. Dated girls in my own class, maybe a half a year younger, sometimes older girls. So when I first saw Rosemarie Stanton come to Uni High, I was A11. She was a B10. And everyone noticed her. She was Eddie Stanton's little sister. And she was beautiful. And certainly I noticed her at the time, and can't say I wasn't very attracted. I was. But we never met or talked until at least the following summer of 1960, we were crossing Pacific Coast Highway in front of Roy's restaurant at Will Rogers State Beach. And she was with a friend, and I think I was alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the first time we talked. We didn't actually end up dating for another 6 months, but that's the first time we saw each other.
But
I'd seen you. You didn't know who I was. Huh?
No, I didn't know who he was, but he was wearing jeans and rolled up white T-shirt. And I turned to my friend as she talked to him as we're going one way on the Coast Highway, and he's going the other. He's going towards the beach, and we're going to Roy's. And I said, "Who was that?" So I just definitely. And then I don't know, out of the blue, 6 months later, he asked me if I could go out Friday and Saturday night of Christmas vacation. And I thought, I'm too embarrassed to tell him I don't have a date for, both of those days, which was unusual. And so I thought, I can do Saturday night. But I talked to my friend and I said, I know he's a good student and he's a good athlete, So what did you think? She said, I went out with him once or something. He's a really good guy. So, he had a nice reputation then, and I was aware of it.
Not now, but then.
So anyway, so I was definitely attracted to him because I just said to my friend, who was that? I'll never forget it. I'll never forget what he looked like. He looked a little older than some of the boys. He was a little more muscular, and probably why you rolled your T-shirt.
I didn't roll my T-shirt. You keep saying that. I never rolled my sleeve.
The pack of cigarettes there. No.
So that was our first date, December 17th, 1960. And as I said, we dated, and Rose went to the prom and grad night and all that.
Wait. The first date, I was the first boy I ever kissed on the first date. And we had a really good time. And I went home, and my mom came into my room, and she said, well, how was it? And I said, I just really liked him a lot. And so that was just, I don't know, it really clicked. And I don't know if it made as much an impact on you or not. I don't know.
It did. I just didn't show it.
No problem.
Okay, so what I heard so far is good looking. And that only goes so far. So what are the other?
Reputation, good student, good athlete, nice person. I knew that much about him. Yeah. I don't know if he knew anything else about me. I don't think he did.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
I got to know you pretty well in the next 6 months. One of the things talk about karma, just like astrological science, we're not in that too much, or karma. We both have strong faiths, and we found that we had that in common very early when I asked her to go to me to our church, Trinity Baptist Church in Santa Monica, and she willingly went along. And
I loved it. That's great.
And that's been a big part of our relationship ever since.
And then in your list here, it says, why did you have some of the same values? I've always wanted to marry somebody that I respected, because I had really highly respected my father. He was very intelligent, like Dave. My dad had been a pilot. Dave's father had been a pilot. We both came from happy families. I don't know if our siblings were as happy as we were, but we were both very happy with our families. And there were just a lot of things that I respected and admired Dave for. And he was kind and intelligent. And when I got to college, and my friends heard about this boy that would be calling me, because my parents paid for the phone calls, which was so sweet, in college, and they'd say, well, you just really seem to know, that what you want in a person. And a friend of mine said, I thought you only had to get the cutest guy in college, And I said, well, there were so many really fine qualities about Dave. And he, as I say, I wanted to love and respect somebody my father was a great role model from that standpoint. My parents were they'd met in high school, and they were extremely happy marriage. So your folks married later, but a very happy marriage.
Nice long marriage.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that carried us through all those times, more than just attraction.
Definitely.
You ask whether we're opposites, certainly in some ways, but we have much more in common than we have not in common. And so I think those things unite you too, your faith, your values, your love of family, etc.
Athletic. We're both very, very athletic, very competitive and athletic.
Now, I didn't know that about her, but she turns out to be one of the best female athletes I've run into.
It's true. We love playing sports together.
First discovered it
Yeah.
probably in about January, February of 1961. Took her out to play wiffle ball and throwing these balls up real softly to her. She's whacking them out of the park. I said, wait a minute.
So we were tennis partners, golf partners, competitive, fun, loved it, and biking, across Europe together and places, and
Vermont.
Yeah, in Vermont. So always, now we still play golf. We swim. We walk together. I mean, we surfed when we were young a little bit.
No more jogging.
Yeah, but we both are very fun-loving, obviously, and we always have, Dave and I. I mean, when we went to the most serious appointments for Dave, and you'd listen for 45 minutes to this doctor talking about death and dying.
Oh, gosh.
Dave and I, we'd have this thing where we decided we were going to make next appointment. We're going to make this guy laugh, because he's really serious, this doctor. So, I mean, our sense of humor is, I think, from both families, both sides of the family had very, strong senses of humor. So,
Give you an example,
and our
Gail.
faith, obviously.
When we found out my prognosis, we decided we did not want to have our children have to plan the funeral for either one of us. So we went to the local cemetery and we signed up for an entire package that included picking out your casket, your plot, and music that be played, just about everything. Well, I was probably more somber and serious about it. Rose had left for a little while. She says, Dave, you got to come in the other room. You got to see these beautiful caskets. You can carve the West Point crest in the side of your casket. So she got all excited
I could
about
get
it.
one with a rose carved on it.
So I said, you're treating this like planning a wedding.
I said, it is like planning a wedding. And so the person who was dealing with us said, because Dave arrived, he wasn't feeling really well, obviously. A couple months before that, he'd gotten the news of terminal illness and all this, and seen all these doctors and everything. And I saw him walking across the street towards the office where I was waiting for him at the mortuary. And I thought, oh, poor Dave. I made him do something maybe. Well, then he got there, and I went and gone and peeked in that other room, and I came back, and then our woman said, I don't think you have time to do that today. And I looked at her and I said, oh, just watch me. Dave, come on in here. You just got to come. And we just, he was just thrilled. He could put his class West Point crest on this. So we just went ahead that day and we did it. Dave could be buried at West Point. It was such an honor to be buried there. And it was his choice, really, whatever he wanted. But my folks are buried there, but we thought our kids might.
At the local place.
At the local place in California. Cemetery. And it's right next to the school our kids had gone to. And so Dave opted for that, which is, I think at times I feel, I would change it, if he ever changed his mind, that would be fine with me. I would totally understand it.
I won't know. You can bury me wherever you want.
Just throw the ashes out.
We put my mother's ashes in the Santa Monica Bay. That's what she wanted.
Nice.
It was great. So you mentioned that in some ways you're opposites, and I think that's important too, because then you can balance and learn from each other. If you're exactly cookie cutter, then it could be boring. So in what ways are you different that you learn from? And Rose, you're a little bit off the camera.
Oh, sorry. Well, Dave is much more intelligent than I am.
I'll turn this
But I have great emotional intelligence, so that helps. And he has, he's very, very gifted and bright, as are both our children, and my parents were too, and so was my brother. So Dave is really great. I cannot spell because I have a hearing thing, auditory processing issue, And Dave never tires of helping me spell because I just can't hear it right and I can't remember it. And he's like, if you do the crosswords, I'll know the answer, but then, so we do them together, So that's you can see how that's such a nice balance there. And we both have a sense of humor, yes, but we're both athletic, yes. Dave is much more staid, I think, at times than I am, probably, and calmer, as he said. But I'm great in emergencies or great, like you probably learned when we were separated at West Point. We both have great perseverance, but I'm also very good in emergency, and in things that we have to struggle through, like 4 years apart, and I mean, so we both we're good at that.
But you show your emotions a lot more than I do.
Yeah, I definitely.
And that kind of lifts me up.
Yeah, I'll just say, come on, Dave. I remember when he came back from Viet Nam and I said, let's go get you. We're driving down the freeway and I said, let's go get you an ice cream cone. You love 31 flavors or you love ice cream. And Dave was saying, oh, I don't know if I want an ice cream cone. I said, Dave, and it was like the first couple months. And then he had some nightmares, obviously, because he was being shot at, on a plane. And he's the flying the plane with being shot at left and right and from down below over in Laos. But I think his emotions were just compartmentalized and probably, we're both very good at compartmentalizing if we have to. But, then he started to get, a little more showing his emotions. And then that was an example to me of I talked him into, we got to get the ice cream. Come on, you love an ice cream. So sometimes I'll just needle him to the point where he just can't resist it. And I said, it's going to be fun,
But
so.
We're both A personalities and
Yeah.
tend to be controlling, and that can make you butt heads sometimes. In fact, one of my longtime secretary said, I don't know how 2 A personalities stay married like you guys. So
We always both have to have a lot going on in our lives. We really are very active, and sometimes I wanted to get my master's and in psychology and be a marriage family counselor, and so I got approved that I didn't even have to take the graduate record exam, but UCI approved me because I'd been graduated there. That at Pepperdine, they said, you don't even have to get do the graduate record exam, and you can go for your master's. And at the time, I was very active at the church, and Dave was too, you were on the board, and I was on the preschool board. And we had 2 children, and Dave went and talked to the pastor, and he said, I just really feel that this would be difficult. And Dave was, very high productive in his business. I just, really wanted to do it. And he said, the pastor said, you do so many things for other people all the time anyway, through the church and everything. Maybe this would be would be difficult for you too. And so I didn't do it because, I wasn't going to be in a walk in the park with 2 kids and Dave on a path that he was on financially and everything else. And then I ended up finding, many other ways that I helped make financially for us. Because I call it our money, because fortunately I did that. Because I think Dave kind of tends to sometimes think, well, I want to be in charge here. I paid the bills when he was in Vietnam, but he goes, I want to be in charge. And we have to remind him of how much money I also contributed to financially to what we ended up being able to give our kids some someday. Yeah, so anyway.
Well, what's an example of a time that you've had the type A's butt heads? How do you resolve those kind of conflicts? Because they're inevitable in any roommate situation.
I give in. I just give in and say, yes, dear.
You do not.
Works every time.
Is that true, Rosemary?
Oh, no. Well, I think we respect each other. And I think that, Dave, if I'll just say sometimes to Dave, this is really important to me. Will you please listen to me. This is really important, and I don't know exactly how to tell you any more than, can you just trust me? I need you to be able to, do this or support me in this or do that. And I think we really try to listen to each other. I think financially there have always been, we've had some really big things happen.
Both ways.
Both ways, yeah. And so I think financially we've made, decisions. One time Dave made a decision that he thought he had to make, and I didn't like it at all. But
me ordering that couch?
No, that was the best story. This is a humorous example. Dave, he said, I want a leather sofa. I don't want the turquoise one I've done interior design before. I don't want the turquoise sofa leather. I want to get one that, this is during the pandemic, that puts my feet up and whatever for watch TV. And I said, okay, I want a really big TV then. And I thought we kind of had it together. We were going to do leather and do something with feet up. Well, I wake up one morning, Dave says, I ordered the sofa on Amazon
in the middle
of the night. And I said, oh no. I said, I haven't even seen the fabric. I said, you better call them. So Dave calls them, and you tell him what you said. It was so funny.
By the way, it would have worked perfectly. We ended up getting a different one, but I said, you've got to help me here. I know I ordered this and committed to it, but I've got a 50-plus year marriage, 55 at the time, almost. Yeah, so you better let me cancel this. They said, well, if it's going to disrupt a 55-year marriage, then we'll let you cancel the order.
Yeah.
So then we ended up going together and getting another sofa, which works out great.
Yeah, but it was just, it's kind of an example how we kind of work together. We're a very, very extremely good team. We've been best friends since high school, and we just are a really good team together. If one of us needs, this morning Dave went and sat in the car while I had a sonogram for, something on my breast, so, and I went to all of Dave's, chemos and City of Hope and all sorts of stuff. But we just are there for each other, and we sense when the one person is kind of like, just, I don't know, I think it's great. You can count and trust each other.
And how does one keep from getting bored after almost 60 years together?
This one's never boring.
Never boring.
One idea after another. The joke is she comes up with all the ideas and I have to implement them.
It's true.
She decides what we need to do to our yard and what we want to build here and build there.
Or give the kids or do something, vacation or whatever. And then that is the joke. That's the family joke. I come up with all these great ideas and I'm enthusiastic about them. And I took at our 25-year anniversary, I wanted to go to Africa because I'd read a couple books and I wanted to take the family to Africa because we're very religious, and I wanted the children to see just God's great world where one animal eats the top of the grass and the other eats the bottom of the grass, and just, I just got everybody excited, and we all went, and it was like the best trip anybody ever had.
So it's never boring, Gil.
Yeah.
I wish sometimes it was a little boring, but it's never boring.
What about raising kids? Sometimes there can be a conflict. One's stricter, one's more lenient. What about child rearing teamwork?
I don't think we had too many differences. I think Rose would consider herself maybe sometimes more of the disciplinarian.
Yes.
But we both had pretty high standards for our kids, and the kids were wonderful, and they lived up to them. So we didn't have too many problems.
Well, we went one time when our son was a teenager, and we went to this lady who really was kind of, she wasn't very nice, but she said, well, when your son comes to you, don't let him play one against the other, because this one was more of a soft touch. And I came from a strong, strict family, I think. were wonderful and gave me everything, but my father was, I think, critical and at times very critical and strict. And my mom really actually slapped my face, washed my mouth out with soap. So there were a few incidents there that weren't any fun. And Dave had similar disciplinary physical action from him too, that when he was growing up. But I thought that was really great advice. And so when he'd say, I want to go ride in a car, with these other kids. And then he might ask me. And then if I say, well, I don't think so, because I don't know, whether this will be safe and whether, how long has he had his license or something like that. And then they'd go to Dave and Dave would say, oh, well, yeah, they probably have a good time. That's probably okay. So they kind of knew that. But we, when we kind of learned that we would do things like that, it really helped. That was very helpful.
Talk it over before giving answers.
Yeah.
Don't do it's okay with me, ask your mother,
Yeah,
kind of
so that worked really well. And they're wonderful
Fortunately,
people.
we had great kids.
And they love us, and we love them, and we're so grateful they like us.
Do you have grandchildren?
We have one, a Rose. Rose Millicent.
6 Rose.
The 6th Rose.
Wow.
Yeah.
But she goes by Millie because her mother didn't want to be called Big Rose.
Yeah.
So she Rose Millicent, but known as Millie.
She's very proud that she's a Rose, though. She knows the family history, because my license plate says Rosebud.
Oh.
So it's.
What kind of career path did the kids take? Did your son fly as well, or your daughter?
No, our daughter is now headmaster at John Thomas Dye School in Bel Air. So she went into education. She went to Princeton, played volleyball, still holds some records there for women's volleyball. Had a wonderful experience. Played all 4 years and so forth. And then she got out, dabbled in a few things, got a master's degree, and then ended up in education. Went to San Francisco, lived there for quite a while, became an assistant headmaster at a prestigious school there. And then 3 years ago, moved to John Thomas Dye, which is on Shalon Road in Bel Air, so not too far away. Our son has been fascinated with movie making since he was in artwork of all kinds. He went to USC Film School, but elected not to go into the film production side of it and instead chose animation. He's been an animator with Disney and Warner Brothers and on what's the one?
Sony and Medal of Honor. Game
and
EA.
And now he started this year during COVID, online animation academy.
Because he's been a professor. He was also, after 18 years in the business in LA, he went to being head of a department in Laguna College of Art and Design in the animation department. And in the 10 years, he tripled the department.
Yeah.
The students, and very successful. And so he loved the teaching, he's divorced and doesn't have any children, but he loves the students. He's great with the students and just does anything and everything for them. And
now our granddaughter has shown a real interest in art. In animation, actually, and in comic books and so forth. She's only 11, but he's arranged to have, we pay for it, but found an instructor who's giving her special instruction on animation, and particularly she thinks she might want to illustrate comic books, comic strips.
Who knows?
Who knows?
I will tell you, it is on both sides, the artistic. Dave's sister was a professional artist.
Oh.
My mother was a landscape. She didn't finish college at UCLA, but went back to get her later years, her landscape architectural design. And then I've been done. Well, how I made money for us is Dave. We would we'd fix houses up and I'd redo them. And Dave being a developer and knowing about curving the walls and all this. And then I had this very creative nature myself. So it's interesting. It's on both sides of the family. I wouldn't say Dave is creative. I am. I would say that's one thing we are different. And I'm probably much more sensitive as our son is. But our daughter also was art history at Princeton and then went into .com. And then an interesting thing we've done with both kids is always been very supportive of them educationally. And our daughter, when she did the .com, and it kind of started to really taper off, and she was like doing 6 people's work when the crash hit. I said, it may be time just to come home. I've told you I'd always pay for your master's. So she came home that year and got her master's got approved to get it in English, even though she was an art history major at Princeton, and took a test and got accepted at UCI, very good creative writing program. The same thing, our son, we had offered for him to go for his master's, but the summer he graduated, he got offered a job at Warner Brothers part-time, and then they wanted to make it full-time, and he said, this is just a beyond imagination, thing for me. So I think he's gotten 12 units of master's in animation. They didn't used to have it, even
didn't have a program.
Didn't have really a program. So, but we just have always been, really supportive of them, and have been always aware of getting insurance to pay for when we die, to be able, they can pay for the taxes and all that, an insurance policy for that. And we just, with our trust, and we've always been very, we've spent a lot of money, but we've been very cognizant of wanting to set up our trust, which we did years ago when we were in our 40s.
How does one keep romance alive for 60 plus years? So where there's still some chemistry, tingle?
What's your answer?
Well, still think she's gorgeous.
She is.
And I'm attracted to her. And she's fun. And we share a lot of laughs together. And like I said, we'll do the crossword together, or play golf together, or play bridge together, and just we do a lot of things together, probably more than most couples.
Yeah, definitely.
And it just never ceases to be fun.
Yeah, and I don't think we've ever really lost the attraction. I mean, I think of each other, and we just have so many great memories together, and we had a wonderful sex life, and so that certainly was wonderful and great. But I think when you're this stage in your life, and you just one of the others going in for some medical thing or something, but we just still have the best time and so much fun. And we forgot to say that we have a little dog, and we've always had animals, and we love animals.
Can you bring Max up?
Max wants to come show you.
Oh, good.
That's the difference. I always had large dogs in my family, and Rose's family always had dachshunds. So we've had one large dog, but mostly we've had dachshunds.
Cute.
That's Max.
He's your therapy dog. Dave, he ran in the dachshund races. Dave got him when he got diagnosed. And he's when Dave has a treatment or something he would always know. He'd go right to bed with Dave, and if Dave come home from a hospital for this or that, he'd just stay right next to him and not move.
Wow.
And the dog is truly like a therapy dog. And so to get accepted for the races, the dog races, Dave said, "I'm a veteran, and what did she tell him? I'm terminally ill, diagnosed," which was all true. And they said, and I thought, so in front of 13,000 people, this dog ran. We trained the dog, and he ran in the dachshund.
All dachshunds. They call it the Wiener National.
Yeah. But I mean, we are constantly, no matter how serious something is, you can see we just love to flip it, and we address it seriously, but we also, just our sense of humor, I think. When we went through some of the things that going to the City of Hope, and which is a very serious place, and we'd go to Boston to meet a specialist or a specialist in LA or whatever. I just think every day, we never wanted to lose a day. Like my friend says, you squeeze the lemons and make lemonade every day, and she'd lost a son. And I just think Dave and I really believe that God has given us, so much, and we want to really appreciate every day and get the most out of each day that we can. And I think with laughter is so important, and it's just so much a part of our lives, that, and it was in both our families, so. But I think that Dave and I mean, he still looks great, although I must say his attire during the pandemic in the morning, it's really kind of funny. Got the West Point shirt on, sweatshirt on. And I'd say, now, Dave, you got to change your clothes. It's like 10 o'clock.
Maybe shave.
Maybe shave. I've been cutting his hair, which has been really great. He didn't really want me to do it. And I said, Dave, I'll be great at this. And so he sat down, and I said, well, the last couple haircuts he'd gone to the $7 haircut place, and he walked in, and I started laughing. I mean, they cut it so short, and so he likes the haircuts I give him.
She charges more than a regular barber.
Yeah, looks good.
But he's still a very handsome man to me. That's all.
Absolutely. Dave, how did you get into developing real estate from being a pilot? What's the segue?
When I got out of the service, I went back to UCLA to get a master's degree.
In what?
And in business, MBA. And also I was going to get an education credential at the same time. This was 1970. And as we mentioned, Rose had lived with her parents the whole time I was in Vietnam. So when I got back in Vietnam, the day of my return, I got out of the service. My commitment was up. But went back, and we both lived with her parents for 3 months while I was going to school. The most natural thing would be to stay in flying, so I applied to all the airlines. I had kind of naively thought, since my father had been chief pilot for TWA before he retired, I could walk in there anytime, and I had a lot of flying hours, a lot of experience, had flown all over the world, and I thought I could just walk in and get a job. So I went to a guy that was now the chief pilot, used to be his co-pilot, and said, I'd like to come to work. And they said, well, boy, you're really qualified, but you'll have to get in line behind the 3,000 pilots that are on furlough right now.
Oh, wow.
So I sort of gave up on that, but I did apply to all the other airlines. This is a time when, for whatever reason, no airlines were hiring. And then just before Christmas, after 1 quarter of graduate school, I got a notice from Pacific Southwest Airlines in San Diego, PSA. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a commuter line up and down the coast to come and be part of their program, and they were going to hire me. And so I thought, well, this is too good of an opportunity to pass up. I'll try it. So we picked up, went down, rented a house in San Diego, and I started flying there. But airlines are such that everything's on seniority, your date of hire. It doesn't matter how good you are or how bad you are. If you're really bad, you get fired. But if you can pass the minimums, it's all based on date of hire. So I was flying second officer, which is a euphemism for flight engineer. Wasn't even in the right seat. Wasn't even co-pilot. I was behind all these other guys who had been hired during Vietnam, had almost no flying experience. And I had more flying experience than any of the co-pilots and quite a few of the captains. But I was pegged to be in my rotation based on my date of hire, regardless of ability or experience. So they actually did me a favor. After just about a year, they furloughed my class. There were only
7 people.
7 or 8 people in it. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, because I was making probationary pay of $700 a month or something like that. So I'd used all my combat pay that I'd saved up while I was in Vietnam to live off of until I could get off of, was just about to get off it on a regular salary. And they said, you're furloughed. I went to the people in charge there. PSA owned SeaWorld and hotels and rental car companies. And I said, I need a job. I've got a wife and I've got a young son. I can't just wait around. They said, oh, you can't do that. Why don't you go fly for the Air Force Reserve up at Norton Air Force Base or something like that until we call you back? I said, I don't want to do that. I said, why can't you give me a job? They said, well, it would be a bad precedent, and we'd have to do it for everybody with furlough. So I said, okay. Went back and looked at an ad in the paper and they had a job opening in San Diego in development, and they had a company car and pretty good salary, much more than I was making. And so I answered the ad, and the guy said, you know, you're qualified for this job, but I think there's a much better opening for you up in Orange County. I said, really? So try not to make this too long, but the company was the Irvine Company, and they own about 1/4 of Orange County. We're in the midst of developing it all into a planned community. And so I went up and interviewed, and then they had a program then where they sent all applicants to Los Angeles for a day or a day and a half of really intense testing called aptitude testing for industry. And I took those tests, I guess did pretty well. I came back. And
He did better than anyone who ever took the test.
they offered to,
He did. That's part of the story. He'll tell you.
but I didn't have any experience. I had a civil engineering degree, but no experience. So I was at a disadvantage. And they offered me the job, but I actually turned it down. And I said, I moved my family all over, you know, in the service. We're down in San Diego now. I move them up here, then I've got to move them. If, you know, when this airlines call me back, I'll probably go back to them. That's what I was thinking at the time. And I would have to move them again. They said, look, we'll pay your way up here. And if you decide after that amount of time that you want to go back, we'll pay your way back. So it's almost an offer I couldn't refuse.
No, yeah, but wait.
But I had refused it. That's
He
the
turned
second
it
one.
down.
Rose said to me,
I-
we drove back to San Diego, and I told her, she said, I think you should reconsider. Did you talk to Bob Snyder?
No, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So the story is I got a phone call from the fellow who had been interviewing Dave.
This is after
Who's
Dave
since
said
been
no.
Yes, Dave
Said
said
no.
no.
So
He didn't
then
want
he
to do that
called-
with family.
Smart guy.
He calls, and he said, you know, he explains who he is, and he said, you know, your husband did better than anyone who's ever taken this test before, and I really think he'd be great, and he's worried about, you know, you moving, you know, would that be, you know, concerned? I said, well, you know, my father always said Dave would enjoy business and always thought Dave would like it. And so my dad knew Dave very, very well, very close to him. And I respected my dad for his views on what he knew about business. He'd gone to SC and gotten his master's in business. And so I said, you know, I'm going to talk to Dave because, no, I would move again. You know, if you think this is a good opportunity for Dave to try business. And so I went back to Dave and said, Dave, I think you should go up. The guy's asking you to go up again. I said, I think you should do it. And so I went up with him and he went to lunch. And then we went to get finish the interview and offer you the job. And
You got sick in the parking lot.
I got sick in the parking lot. I had shrimp, and I guess it was like spoiled or something. I said,
Oh,
Dave,
dear.
go up and accept the job. I'm stuck in the parking lot throwing up. And I said, and he did, and he was so glad he did, and
Oh,
it was
good.
so the right thing. But you know, it was funny because I just really, my dad had always said that, and Dave actually was a phenomenal developer and loved it, and it was so exciting and so wonderful. You absolutely were just
To illustrate
tailor-made
that,
for Dave.
in the first week I got there, they put me in charge of a job that I had no experience for, building a bulkhead and excavating a lagoon to build lots around a man-made water, a lake, but a lagoon really. And we had every problem in the world, from the city stopping us because of the sand on the streets to like one of the dump trucks backing into a telephone pole, knocking over on a prominent citizen's business, and he was yelling and complaining. And got to the end of the week, and I was going through it, or some other things. And I said, Rose said, well, how's it going? I said, I love it.
And he was an engineer from, you know, West Point, so that helped too. I mean, he had that great background on
But
that.
I love problem solving.
Well, and you also
That's
are a
what
very
it is.
good leader, because I think the Air Force, he learned to lead. I mean, led people when they were being shot at, and, you know, his crews. And so he was a very taught, you know, West Point taught a lot of really wonderful values that I think that, you know, duty, honor, country, and all these things. And a lot of these men that have been gone to war and friends of Dave's are really fine people.
Let me finish that story. But 6 months later, I'm working, and I think I've already been promoted from assistant project manager to project manager, so it's going well. And so they said, there's somebody from San Diego calling you on the phone.
Uh-oh.
So I go pick it up. It's the chief pilot from Pacific Southwest Airlines. He said, Kuhn, where have you been? You haven't kept your records up. We don't know how to get in touch with you. We found you. You're being recalled to fly. I said, oh, thank you very much for going to the trouble to locate me. I have a job here. He said, okay, be here at Monday morning at 9 o'clock. We're going to start training for a week, and then you'll be back flying the line. I said, well, sir, I have a job. I'm pretty happy here. He says, just be here Monday at 9 o'clock. So this goes on several times. And finally, I said, well, I have a job, and I'm happy. He said, son, you don't understand. We're calling you back to fly. I finally had to say, sir, you don't understand. I'm not coming back. I guess I'd never had that happen before.
So Dave goes on eventually to have his own company and develop Eastlake in San Diego, which is, how big was the project?
3,000 plus acres and 12,000 homes and industrial and commercial and lakes and golf course and so forth. So.
And then tell her what happened when you came to tell me we had to be on the loans for guarantee, how much they were.
No, I don't want to talk about that.
Huge amount. We didn't know anybody. We were in our 40s. We didn't know anybody anything. And then we're all of a sudden gambling.
Guaranteeing $240 million.
$240 million. So all I can tell you is that there have been a lot of interesting things.
I never enjoyed anything so much as working on something, planning something, and then actually seeing it built, come out of the ground, and then see couples strolling their babies around a path around a lake that you built, stuff like, see them actually being used the way you envisioned. So that's very, very rewarding.
And you liked working with your team. That's such a great team.
Yeah.
This is a different subject, but I'm just curious, in terms of the military, you always hear about, you know, like a screwdriver that they charge $200 for or something, that there's all this waste in the Pentagon. Is, in your experience, in your observation, is that true or not? Is it a lean machine, or is it, do they overspend?
Well, the spending has nothing to do with people in the military. It's all the civilian side. They're the ones that do all the procurement, and they do all the buying and so forth. And I think there are cases where they pay way, way more than they should. But that really has nothing to do with the soldiers or airmen or sailors. So from our point of view, we thought we were living well on $500 a month.
Yes, except the plane that Dave flew in Vietnam was an old plane that had been retrofitted, and all this equipment was put on it. And it was the 119.
It was a Korean War plane.
Yeah.
And there was a specific plane they should have used for this mission called the C-130, which is still flying today. But McNamara got the idea to take these planes that were in mothballs and convert them. They should have never been flying again. They spent millions on them to get them to fly, and we barely got them to Vietnam. They barely lasted while they were there. Then they left them all there when we left Vietnam.
So there can be some mistakes, obviously.
We call that McNamara's falling.
Yeah.
So, and it jeopardized the cruise too. But there's another plane that could have done the mission much better.
But overall, when there's trillions and trillions of defense, you hear about, you know, all these trillions spent on some big bomber that they don't actually need or whatever. So I'm interested in how much of the huge military budget is necessary and how much is not.
You know, I'm not qualified to answer. I've never been in the procurement side. I don't know.
Okay.
I think we are very pro-military, and we've been exposed to many people that have been Dave's classmates that were very high up on the chiefs of staff and people. And I think that it was very challenging when the military started to be thinned out so much and for all these different hotspots. And
But you may be right on equipment. It's not true with personnel. I mean,
yeah,
they pay you very, very little.
Ah,
So they don't overpay on the people, but
yeah.
probably there's a lot of boondoggles on the equipment.
this is totally off the subject, but I'm just interested in terms of like Afghanistan. If you were Secretary of Defense, would you pull us out or would you keep us there?
Again, I don't know enough about that particular one to say. I would never have gone to Iraq. And I think they could have done things a lot differently in Afghanistan versus a 19-year or whatever it's been, 20-year now, involvement. Probably would tend towards getting out. But it's tough because for people, even in Iraq, for families who've lost a loved one there, then all of a sudden you're saying that they died for nothing. And so that's a tough decision. Same with true in Afghanistan.
And
Also
in
just
Vietnam,
walk
I
away.
think Dave felt that they had some rulings where you guys couldn't
Oh,
go
yeah.
all out
The rules of engagement
and were just,
kept us from winning the war.
yeah, So-
Dictated that you'd lose it
yeah.
because it just became a war of attrition. You couldn't do the things you needed to do to defeat the enemy. So those rules of engagement still exist in most conflicts we're involved with. Make it very difficult.
Yeah.
To kind of sum it up then, if you were going to give advice to a young person about what to look for in a spouse, how to make their marriage be as successful as yours, what would you tell them? Like maybe to your granddaughter when she's older.
Well, actually, I've got my brother's son recently got married. He's older, 37. And so we've talked to him a little bit about that, about raising kids and so forth. I have anyway. And I think you've got to find someone that shares your values, very much so. And as Rose said earlier, someone you respect and you trust. And that's probably the most important thing. What would you say?
I made a little, I said faith, love, respect, values, morals, never give up on a marriage when partner's depressed or sick or bad or whatever, perseverance. And it's a precious treasure to have such a relationship, and so cherish it and be grateful for it. But I think, and I guess keep a sense of humor, because obviously it's important to us too. And physical attraction is, important. Certainly, and not cheating on your spouse, is very important. I remember Dave's father said to me when he picked me up at the airport for some reason, and he said, we were just about to get married, and he said, I think Dave will never, cheat on you. And I thought, I hadn't even thought of Dave cheating on me. Of course, I always told Dave I was Italian and from Palermo, and he'd be very sorry if he ever did anything wrong. Because I contact my family. He lived in fear to this moment with that.
Still do.
Yeah, so there you go.
So,
But yeah, I think people are foolish when I think it's, if you cheated on a spouse, I think you are making a conscious decision. And I don't care what anybody says. I think it's a conscious decision. And I think that, that's why I'm very glad Dave and I dated a lot of people before we got married. He asked me to get engaged when I was senior in high school, and you were at West Point. And I said, no, Dave, are you kidding? And then one time we promised we'd never get pinned, and I got pinned to somebody, but I took the pin, I didn't put it on. I called Dave. Well, before I did, my friend said to me, Rose, what about Dave? And I said, oh, you're right, I can't take this pin. But Dave said, well, I guess that's it. You took someone's pin. Well, I never told him I gave the pin back, because I decided that at that moment, I knew that he was the right one for me. But he hadn't dated as much as I had, because obviously there are not girls there. So I just thought, he needs to find out. And a friend of mine said, his mother told my mother that she was went out with Dave at West Point and whatever. And I thought, he needs to find out that I am that as precious as I think he is. And I just remember it's an epiphany, like, hey, this is the one person, yes, but he never knew until I didn't see you for 6 months or something. And then my grandmother died, and he called me and said, I'm really sorry to hear your mom died. My grandmother died. And I said, Dave, I really miss you. You've been my best friend, And so we saw each other, and then we were dating. And he said, well, I don't know if I'll ever could trust you again because you were going to take this other guy's pin and everything. So we went out a couple times, and then I got a phone call from some girl he dated, and she said something, and I said to Dave the next morning, I said, Dave, I don't think I'm going to go to your family barbecue. We've got some other girl here, I think I'm out of it, just keep going, And then Dave said, wait a minute, Rose. So I think he had that epiphany all of a sudden that he didn't want to lose me.
Was that when you were at San Jose State when the other guy offered the pin?
Yeah, I dated a lot of people. I mean, I went on my first date in the 4th grade. So, I mean, I dated a lot of people. I dated a lot of people in high school. I dated a lot of people in, I had one other serious boyfriend in junior high, and I had lots of boyfriends, but all along, before Dave and after I met Dave. But I think that's really healthy. I mean, we were 4,000 miles away. I wrote Dave all the time. 3,000. I wrote him all the time. We called each other every summer. I wouldn't see him, but when would I see you?
Sometimes, one time, 6 months sometimes. And,
yeah, I wouldn't see him.
And it would be strained when I got back, but within a couple of days, it seems like it was back to normal.
Yeah. So, but, and all those separations helped for when he was gone in South Carolina, which was not easy time, and then gone when he was in Vietnam, and then when he was working as a developer, he was very successful. He would be gone all the time during the week, and I was kind of running the show, and I was involved with anything and everything, lots of things, and he ended up just being home on the weekends to go to church with the family, which we really appreciated because we couldn't have that before. So, I know some friends say, well, I've never spent a night away from my husband or something like that. And she lost her husband, and she had somebody else she's happily married to. She said, well, he's going to go be with his family, and he's going to be gone 3 nights or something like that. And I thought to myself, oh, hey, suck it up. It's not that difficult. But I mean, that's all prepared me for, life. And that's all there is to it,
Right.
I was, if I lost him when he was looking like he wasn't going to make it before the transplant, I thought Dave was going to die. I sold our big house and moved to be closer to all the, to Newport and everything. And our roles had changed. I was taking out the trash, and I was doing a lot of things that, he did. Then for the pandemic, the roles changed back. You were helping clean the house with me because we didn't have a housekeeper for a while. We didn't want to expose her or be exposed. But so anyhow, all in all, it's been a great adventure. And I am very grateful that I think Dave had some experiences where he finally, when he did come back and we both got back together, that we both had dated other people and seen other people and how other people function. And we were just, good Lord gave us a chance to be together.
So how old were you when you actually got married?
Rose was
2 weeks,
2 weeks
away.
from being 21, and I was 22.
And your birth order and your families, Dave, you're like the second of 3?
Second of 3, and Rose is the younger sister of her brother, her only brother.
Yeah. So Dave only had a birthday party every 3rd year, was it?
What?
So birthdays are a big deal.
Well,
I had birthdays every year.
my parents were a little more frugal from the South. Came up during the Depression and so forth, and so they would have a birthday party for each child every 3rd year. So people would say, "When's your birthday this year?" I said, "I'm not going to have one. This isn't my year."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Would they like have a birthday cake or something and sing?
I don't
Nothing?
remember. Didn't make a big deal out of it, but
Oh.
we were happy. We didn't care.
One thing, we also have a lot of friends that are, in common, certainly during the pandemic, I have some friends that are widows, and Dave is just really supportive of them, and we've had them come to be in our backyard, and just, we have a lot, we both are very gregarious, and I mean, I am a little bit more, sometimes withdrawn than you sometimes.
You're more
Yeah,
withdrawn?
sometimes.
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, but we both have a lot of friends that care a lot about a lot of people and helping, them be.
And my friends are your friends, and
Yeah,
vice versa.
yeah. So that's really nice. We just love each other's long-term friendships. And even if we bring someone new, in. And we know that we both support each other's relationships, I think, very much so.
Gail, I wanted to ask you a question. You're updating a book you already wrote?
Let's finish this and then I'll explain it.
Okay.
I think we've covered the waterfront. So we're good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.